Hi everyone, it's Zach Reinhardt here for cgboost.com, and in this video I will talk to fellow 3D artist and Blender YouTuber Curtis Holt from London, UK. After getting into coding and creating his first own game, which is available on Steam, Curtis also dived into the art side of creating games and CG art with Blender. Now he's running a YouTube channel since October 2018 called Curtis Holt, surprise! There he shares Blender related content, tutorials, coding videos, advice videos, short animations, and all this is based around the resources he creates for the community, which are Blender add-ons or in general 3D files. And he's also the developer of the famous ByGen add-on. His YouTube channel has grown a lot in just 1 year basically, and now this is his full-time job he's making a living with. In this interview he will talk about how he got started with his YouTube channel, how he's making a living with his YouTube channel, and the importance on focusing the content you create around your personal interests. Before we get started, this video here is brought to you by cgboost.com. Well, that's us. Nice! Anyway, if you enjoy our videos and want to support this YouTube channel, we have a bunch of premium online courses over at academy.cgboost.com, where you can either start your journey as Blender 3D artist or bring your skills to the next level. So if you enjoy this YouTube channel, you might enjoy these courses as well. Also, you can sign up to our mailing list where I send out useful resources and advice for CG artists every 2 weeks. And with that, you also get free access to our resource section, which includes the Blender 2.8 hotkey PDF and a full Blender 2.8 beginners course. All the links you find down below in the video description, and without further words, let's get started. Yeah, hi Curtis, nice to have you here.
Hello.
So the first thing I would like to know from you is where or how did you get started into the world of computer graphics? Yeah.
Well, that's quite an interesting one because I was never really that interested in the art side of things, more so the technical side. Because I think, like, when I was younger, me and my brother were like obsessed with video games and we loved the idea of designing them and making them. But I was always more interested in doing the technical side of that. So, for example, I think the first programming language I ever touched was something called Dark Basic, which was like this little language that was specifically made for creating little games. It wasn't until, say, about 2016-ish that I really started getting more in-depth with doing the art side of stuff. But this was after like a whole string of years of trying to make games and get them put out there. And I did end up publishing a game on Steam in 2015. But after that was like the main turning point where I felt like I'm limited by my knowledge at the moment because I'm fairly good with the programming side. I can make things work how I want to, but I'm not good at making the worlds that I want to. So that was really a turning point where I thought, right, let's sit down and study and learn how to do the art side of stuff, which is when I ended up bumping into all of the different Blender YouTubers for the time, including yourself and Gleb and Andrew Price and a bunch of other people. So yeah, that's really how I started getting into real computer graphics.
So you basically started with coding in the first place.
Yeah.
What was this video game about, which you created?
So in 2015, it was called Our Nation's Miner, and it was about a miner in space. It's a sci-fi game who wakes up and sort of realizes that his race has disappeared. So he's basically moving through all these asteroid fields, trying to take them out and get points. There's all these different zones you can go to. But the game actually evolved over the next couple of years and changed into something completely different because in 2018 I ended up running an alternate reality game, as it's called, and this was codenamed Entropy. And as part of the meta experience for that game, because alternate reality games, for people that don't know, they're basically games that take place in real life as well. So people will be like following puzzles and trails through different websites and like fake companies and stuff, and talking with characters that are responding to them in real life. And the story moved from real life into this video game, and I used the game I had on Steam as like a relay for this. So people would play the games, and people that knew about the ARG would be able to enter like little puzzles and have access to content that the regular public didn't know about.
Okay. And can you still play this game, or
You can, yeah, it's available on Steam. But if you want the full experience of it, then there's a wiki page. There's basically a website called the Game Detectives who look into all these different args and stuff. And there's one for the entropy arg that I ran. So if you want to learn how to access all the secret content that the public don't know about, then you go there and it will teach you what you need to do to the game.
Okay, sounds really interesting and not so much like the typical game someone would create.
Yeah, it's a bit of a problem though because Steam's obviously like a very public store. You get people coming to it looking for like a regular experience and going, oh wow, there's not much content in this, or oh that's a bit of a weird choice. So I had to put like a little notice in the description saying, hey, just so you know, there's a bunch of hidden stuff. If you want to access it, then you need to go here to learn about it.
Okay, nice. So you started with your games, then you basically wanted to create art. So in your childhood, you never really were art interested, I guess?
Not really. I mean, just stuff like, making models and stuff, in packs and the occasional drawing. But I do come from a creative family, so they were always very encouraging of it. Like my dad is a special effects supervisor, and he really likes to, occasionally let his artistic side flow in that as well. So I've always been surrounded by an encouraging atmosphere of, making stuff. So I feel like as soon as my interest in art started to come about, like it was immediately encouraged and flourished. So, I'm not too surprised that that side has now like come into fruition.
Okay. And do you still do coding right now, or do you only focus on the art side of things?
I try and balance the two, but it's interesting because I don't know how much truth there is to like, one side of the brain is more for creativity and one side's more for logic. But I do find that it's difficult to move between the two. Sometimes I'll like spend a week just doing coding, and then it's a bit difficult to like then come back into the art side, and then vice versa. But I think it's important trying to find that balance anyway. So recently I've been creating some interactive demos in Unity because I'm thinking about starting doing some game development type videos. On the side of that, I've also been working on the next version of the BioGen add-on for Blender 2.81 and onwards, which is the generative modeling add-on that I've created. But now, because I haven't really done too many videos on that add-on, I'm starting, and an example of this is my latest video, to try and make tutorials for the add-on, which show people how to make artistic content with it at the same time as I'm developing it. So trying to do both of them at the same time is an interesting juggle that I'm still trying to learn the best way to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's not usual to cover both topics. Like most people cover either. Like most people cover art, and then there are a few people cover coding. But combining these two things, I think it's really special. So you talked about creating videos and so on. So basically, you started your YouTube channel roughly a year ago and a few months.
Yes.
You have already like 50,000 subscribers nearly and over 60 videos. So this all you have achieved in roughly 1 year. So the first thing I want to know is, what was your main motivation to start this YouTube channel?
Well, there's a few reasons. Some of them are not so positive and some of them are positive. So on the positive side, I had tried previously to start a YouTube channel, an educational one, but I had never committed to it at all. Like originally in previous years, I was thinking, right, I'll do some programming type tutorials. And I just gave up on it right away because when you start off as a YouTuber and you don't feel connected to a community, it's very easy to like see the low view counts or like a few dislikes and go, oh, well, it's never going to work then, you know? But that interest never died. So it spiked up in October 2018 when I started this channel, and I just really wanted to commit to it. On the sort of more negative side, and this is something that I think is important for people to hear who are interested in starting a YouTube channel, many of my attempts to find a full-time sustainable job doing freelance or selling assets online had completely failed, like year after year. I mean, even like the video game put up on Steam, they made, a nice amount of money, but it's not sustainable. And that was like, a whole year's worth of work. So it was getting to the point where I was kind of running out of time to try and create a job for myself. I knew that if I didn't get something going by the end of 2018, then I would have to just settle into like a regular full-time job, and that would probably be it. And maybe I could do some other stuff on the side, but I would have to focus on that. So it became like a last-ditch effort. And it was around that time that I had to make a really important choice, because I got a message from a recruitment manager at Unity who asked me if I wanted to apply for a position in their content development team, which was down in Brighton, so south of the country. And I didn't really want to move away from London, which is where I am now. So, but this was a really important choice, because most of my attempts to like apply for any company related to CG had completely failed. So this was an opportunity that presented itself, but it was in conflict with some of my personal choices. So I declined for the time being, and that put me in a really anxious position, which is where, okay, what am I going to do? Because I've only got a short amount of time now to try and figure something out for myself. So that's when I created the first tutorial series for my YouTube channel, which was building a sci-fi corridor with Blender and Unity. It was a 3-part series, and it displayed a range of my skill sets because I wanted to try and package in as much as I could. So I was doing hard surface modeling for the interior. I had like a first-person controller I'd made in Unity, which I used to walk around it to demonstrate things. And really, I wasn't expecting much, but I put it out there, and I forced myself to get over my anxiety of sharing work online by putting it on Blender Nation and Reddit and Twitter and all over the place. And then it took me by surprise because it just exploded. And then all of a sudden, this anxiety of trying to find work had almost been like half, because now it said, okay, here's a bunch of possibilities that have presented themselves now that you actually have visibility online. So that is, to sum up, the motivation for why I started my YouTube channel. There's a positive side of like wanting to have a channel and like wanting to share stuff online. And then there's the realistic negative side of I'm pressured to try and find, a job created by myself.
You kind of answered the next question already, I think, but maybe we go over this anyway. So with all the effort you put into the channel, like over 60 videos, meaning that you created like 5 videos per month, it takes a lot of passion and like dedication to sustain this. What was the hardest part for you till now to run the YouTube channel?
I would say that everyone finds their own way of making the content that works for them. And for me, I struggled quite a lot with the actual process of making the videos. That proved to be the most challenging thing, because I spend like the smallest amount of time actually making the content for the videos and the most amount of time editing it together. And especially with the way that I've done it most of the time so far, I would make the content, I would write a script, which would take like a day or two, depending on the complexity. And then I would do the audio recording, and then I would trim that down, and then I would process that and then put that into like Premiere Pro and then get all the right clips for it. And so most of the time was spent on the editing, and that was really difficult for me to do, like week after week after week, because obviously most of my interest is in just making the content. But over time, I've sort of found ways to make that a bit easier for me. So I've learned how to choose topics where the scripts aren't going to be too long and where I can condense the information down in better ways. So learning how to do that, I would say, was the largest challenge. And it's something that I can't really tell the next YouTube creator how to do, because it's something that everyone needs to discover for themselves, I think, depending on their type of content and their interests.
I think editing videos is probably a part of the creating content, but what do you define as creating content?
Creating the resources because I do Blender videos mostly, and I share the resources. So that's basically it. Making the artwork for the videos, the blend files, and all the stuff that gets shared, and all the stuff that people play with and talk about. That's what I consider the content in this format.
Okay, so not the actual video.
Yeah, the videos I see more as like a means to distribute the content and a means to educate people about the content. Obviously, say about 3 or 4 packages a month I provide to people through my Gumroad page and stuff. So I think that's probably one of the main selling points about my channel. People get a lot of free resources and sometimes paid ones as well, but I like to give away as much free content as I can. And that is enabled by the people that have been providing tips continuously on all the free content. So that is the core content that I provide for my audience. And the videos are the best way to distribute the information about those resources.
Okay. So you take the videos as marketing, let's say, for the content you create. What's interesting is, like, if you would have another way to distribute your resources, another good way, which don't include the YouTube videos, would you stop doing the YouTube videos?
I don't think so, no, because the YouTube videos provide something that I think is invaluable, and it's a point of discussion, and it's a way to connect with your audience. That's something that you're not really going to provide, or sorry, something that you're not just going to get by providing your content through a regular store. So that's something that, helps me get through the trek of just, the tedious editing process. Because at the end of the day, the thing that I enjoy most of all is just making things, giving it to people, and making them excited. Really, everything else is just like extra detail and just tedious effort. But YouTube is a platform that people use to, receive content and get excited about it and share their excitement with. Obviously, on Gumroad and Blender Market and other stores like that, you can't really get a good gauge of the kind of reaction from your audience, because obviously there's no like massive comment section and there's no like to dislike bar on on the store pages. But there are ratings, but again, that's sort of limited. But to get more feedback from my audience, I also have like the Discord server, and there's a link. It's a public server, and there's a link to it at the bottom of the description in every video. So people that want to engage more and want to talk with me and maybe get more sneak previews on content, they can join the server and take part in that discussion.
Yeah. So this was one of my questions anyway. How you get in touch with your community and how you grow the community. So you use Discord, the YouTube section, and is there anything else you use?
Yeah, I use Twitter and Instagram as social media platforms to make general announcements about the content. I use Discord for community discussions. It's a place where people can share their work with me as well, get sneak previews of content. The YouTube is the primary place to share the content. And I do also have a Patreon, but I don't really advertise that as much because it's more of just like a secondary donation platform. But sometimes I put extra things on there that other people don't get to see. So like previews to new versions of add-ons and stuff like that. But really, the main interaction comes from the YouTube and the Discord primarily.
Okay. So, like, if somebody wants to create a community for their stuff, do you would recommend Discord?
I do, yeah. Discord is definitely the best instant messaging platform for communities at the moment, I feel like, because with things like Facebook as well, it requires that you have like this whole profile set up, which is centered around you. But Discord is, it knows what it is. It's a messaging platform for communities with all these other features added on as well, which sort of opens the possibility for communication in different formats.
Okay. And so you said that you don't agree on going to Unity and you focused on your YouTube channel. The question is this now your full-time job, and do you make enough living from that?
So yes, this is my full-time job now. And do I make enough living? It's hard to gauge. The answer is yes at the moment, but it's not sustainable. And the only reason the answer is yes right now is because I have a generous community. So of course, there's income that comes from the YouTube videos via the advertisements. That is the smallest amount of income compared to all the other sources. Then we have Gumroad and Blender Market. Gumroad is where the largest amount of income comes from. And then as well as those, there's some other sites where I distribute content. And then there's affiliate income. So when talking about when talking about other people's courses. You get like a percentage revenue on affiliate stuff. And then there's the opportunity for sponsorships, but I don't really do sponsorships right now. And the reason for that is because I like to focus my content to be relevant towards the audience. Now, obviously, there's a lot of sponsorships that aren't completely relevant, and I don't want to make people sit through things that they don't really want to watch. So I make the decision to only share content that they will be interested in. So overall, those are my main income sources.
And like for somebody who might want to make money through YouTube, what of these income streams you have right now is like the most effective one for you?
Gumroad, 100%.
Yeah.
Because just a tip for anyone that wants to distribute something on Gumroad, make sure you put the plus sign after the price, because that makes it easy for people to give more and add tips to your products. And you'll think, oh, no one will ever tip me. You'll be surprised. Like, if people like the content and they're grateful for you for providing it to them, then they will tip you. That's something that really surprised me, and it racks up over time.
So do you get more money from the tips people make on free products or from the paid products?
That's interesting because it depends on several factors. So people tend to tip me quite often, and I found through testing that you can make more money from a free product than you can a product that's like $1 to $5, for example. Because if you make it paid, then people think, okay, well, I've paid this. I don't feel like giving more now because I've already paid an amount. But if it's free, there's a sense of generosity, and people feel more willing to give something because they understand that you're taking a financial risk by giving stuff away for free.
Yeah.
And I like that connection because it really just it shows your intention as well. Because I am taking a financial risk, no doubt, by giving away so much of my content for free. And I'm really grateful the community is generous enough to make that risk worthwhile, so I can continue to do that.
So how much content do you need to put out per month?
It, again, really depends on the type of content. I try and keep a consistent amount, maybe 3 to 5 packages a month on Gumroad. But again, the size is dependent on what you're interested in making. And so it's really difficult for me to give someone else the advice on what they should make, because again, everyone's looking for their own niche on YouTube. So it really depends. But what I would say is if you're interested in making packages and distributing on Gumroad and showing them on YouTube, research other YouTubers' packages as well and see what kinds of models they're following, business models, that is. Because some people only make paid content, some people only make free content, and then some people do some stuff in between. And you can probably gauge what you should be setting your content as just by taking a look at the community reaction to their products as well. But again, the audience is completely unique to, every YouTuber. Of course, there's a lot of overlap because your audience and my audience, there's going to be some overlap there because we're sharing the same community. But one thing that's interesting, and I've noticed this after speaking to different YouTubers, is that the audience responds differently to different creators depending on their personality types as well. So, depending on how you present yourself, some people may want to be more generous towards you and maybe less generous towards someone else for reasons that are not easy to track. So what you should really do is experiment and, test the waters and maybe even just ask your community how they think you should be like pricing content and whether or not they like the free stuff or the paid stuff. Of course, there's going to be a bias towards people asking for free things. But I think if you're honest with your community, then they will be honest back with you for what they think is best for you.
Yeah. I think experimenting, especially in the beginning, and see what works. Because like asking is one thing, but somebody telling you something, what they would do, and in the end actually doing is sometimes also something completely different.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So you talked about other YouTubers. Recently, you and some other guys started a podcast, a Blender podcast called Blender Nest.
Yeah.
And I would like to know how you got involved into this project and in general, how you connect to other Blender YouTubers or YouTubers in general.
So all of the YouTubers involved in that project, I came into contact with in different ways. Say, for example, Ducky3D, who's doing really well on YouTube now. There was a time shortly after I started making my channel when I got a message from him, and he had less than 1,000 subscribers, and he said, "Oh, like, I love your stuff, you know, this is so nice." And I had a look at his content, and I really liked it. So I said, "Hey, I love your stuff too." And then all of a sudden, like, when the year turned over, he exploded in popularity, and we've maintained conversation on Instagram mostly since then. And then with Grant Abbott, when I put my first tutorial series out, he was the first person to mention it. Like 2 days on from releasing it, he featured it in a video, and I sent him a message saying, "Thank you so much, because this is really encouraging." And then I joined his Discord community, so occasionally we've messaged through there. Southern Shotty sent me an email once, and we had a conversation. And when the opportunity came up for us to put this podcast together, I sent him an email inviting him to a server because I thought he would be a good addition to it, because he's got some good ideas. Blender Binge, completely differently from the others, I first spoke to him through YouTube comments, because in my video where I was explaining how my first year on YouTube had gone, I was expressing thoughts about how I would like to make more meaningful content than content that's just geared towards getting views. And he left a really nice comment on there about, you know, his sympathies and, you know, sharing the same ideas. And then CG Matter was, again, through a conversation through a different format. We emailed first of all, and then, you know, we ended up moving over to Discord server for communication. So every one of these people I had first contact with in a different way. And there's something I like about the community is that you never know what you're going to get, and every personality is quite different. But then we all had shared interests, but we also have different niches that we move into for content. And CG Matter had a really nice idea that I don't know if we'll ever get to, but he said, wouldn't it be interesting if we all did like a beginner course, but all did a different section of it? So like, Curtis, you would be scripting and I would be tracking, and, you know, and all this other stuff. But we'll see. There was no plan beforehand, like, okay, I'm going to speak to this person and this person and this person. It was just what naturally happened.
Yeah. And like, for the success of your YouTube channel, does it benefit to have context to all these people? Like, thing you can really see that it makes a difference, or? Yeah.
Yes. See, YouTube is built on like the recommendation system pretty much. And being in contact with all these other creators and sharing their work and them sharing you, it definitely has a major benefit. And the Blender Nest podcast hasn't had a noticeable benefit on the main channel yet, but that's because it's going to be an investment over time. Because now we can all join forces to try and build this up, and then in return, this will help to help our channels flourish as well. But something I've definitely found while running a channel is that the more you share other people's work, the more your work is going to get shared. So I've tried to mention as many different creators in my channel over time as possible.
Yeah, basically the same as you told with getting in touch with people. It was the same for me. Some people I get in contact with, like, comments they posted under my video, and then I started to get in touch. I think the first stuff I saw from you was in the weekly CG challenge, if I remember correctly. Yeah,
that was like when I started getting into artwork in 2016. I was speaking to a few friends, and I said, I wonder if there's like any challenges that are going on, just to like give me a reason to learn more. And someone stumbled on the weekly CG challenge, and I was like, okay, well, I'll take a look at that. I joined up on Facebook, and then I took part in, like, I don't know how many, like 5, 6, 7 or whatever. And I won one of them, and that was fun. That was I think that was the legendary weapon one or something like that. I've got the entry on Sketchfab somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the first time that we had any kind of contact, I think.
Yeah, and I still remember your artworks, because back then you already used these colors you still use today for your artworks.
Yes, yeah. Blues to pinks and purples and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's recognizable. That's not a bad thing, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
The thing is, I want to try to use more colors, but the problem is I just don't get as much as an emotional connection from them. I don't know what it is, but using the like blue, pink, purple, and reddish range is just more stimulating for me. And I've really tried like putting other like yellows and greens in there, but it just feels wrong to me now. Which I know is maybe bad from an artistic perspective, but at the end of the day, I'm making stuff for enjoyment purposes. So if I can maximize the stimulation I get from making the content and using those colors, then I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone, like everyone has preferences. So also for colors, same for me. So yeah, I think it's totally fine to have a specific style in different areas, not only with like artworks, but also with color you use and the choice of music and all these things. I also remember when I noticed that you started a YouTube channel and was watching the first videos you created with which were Blender related. The first impression I had was, okay, this guy is using a text to voice tool because you sounded so robotic.
Yeah,
but then,
I get that a lot.
Then in one video you showed your face, and I noticed that it's your actual voice.
Yeah,
but I quite like it. It's really straight to the point and clear. So
yeah, I get that a lot, and I don't quite know why. I think it's because see, originally I had to do a lot of processing on the videos because there was so much noise where I record. So I had to eliminate all of it, which of course makes it sound, much more robotic. But also there's the tone and the way I speak. Of course, I have a very British London accent. In fact, this is an estuary English accent, which means that I'm somewhere along the Thames. It's in between like Cockney, which is more like common local, and proper pronunciation. So it's like a sort of hybrid element in between there. And I think this is also what a lot of text to voice synthesizers are based on, like this sort of accent, which is like near, like the BBC News accent. And I think so people are used to hearing that accent in those types of formats. So, one thing as a joke I'll say is that I don't sound like a text-to-voice synthesizer. Text-to-voice synthesizers sound like me.
Yeah. So along your journey, starting with CG, coding, Blender, YouTube, what are the important lessons you have learned, or just one important lesson?
I would say figure out yourself before you try and figure out the content. And what I mean by that is starting the YouTube channel and getting up to speed with making content was an important life lesson for me, because I noticed that my anxiety levels started rising faster and faster and faster while putting out the content. And it was because I was sort of obsessed with, okay, we've got to be on time. What should the next thing be? This, that, and the other. And really, I feel like the effort should be put the other way around. If you focus on yourself and you know what you like and you enjoy, then the content will come secondary to that, and people will understand that. So that is an important lesson, I think. Make sure you understand yourself and what you like, and don't push yourself over the edge. Also, one thing you've got to understand is that, and other people will be okay with this, is that even though you're personally attached to your content, it is undeniably a business thing at the same time. So, for example, especially if you're presenting yourself as the main selling point. So, for example, my channel is called Curtis Holt, and your channel is called CG Boost now. Because I'm an individual and I am self-employed, this is undeniably a business thing. So you've got to learn a certain degree of separation there. So try not to be too emotionally invested in the channel, because then if it doesn't do too well, you are, of course, going to feel quite bad. So you need to be able to adjust how you perceive your content on the wide web as well. So really what I'm saying is that the major lessons to learn are one of mentality and mental health as well overall. Because I think a lot of people can make content, but I think they do it without really considering the repercussions on like a personal level. It's something that really needs to be taken into consideration, and I think this is something that all YouTubers, especially in our community, are familiar with, but something that we don't necessarily talk about all the time, especially not publicly with the audience.
Yeah, really good advice or lesson. It's something I am currently also again experience, like going with the flow of life, because like your private life, it's still the most important thing in your life.
Yeah.
And you basically have to build the YouTube channel and business around that and not the other way around. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So till this point, what would you consider as your biggest success?
I'd say the Biogen add-on is probably the biggest success in a traditional sense, because I put it out there. It did way better than I expected. I couldn't track all the attention it was getting because articles started appearing here and there, and the number of downloads just exploded. That was my first taste of, sometimes like you spend ages working on a project and you put it out there and it does rubbish and you feel bad. And then you spend ages on another one and it does rubbish, etc. And then you spend a short amount of time on something and then it explodes. And then you can't quite understand why. But you're starting to learn about how people respond to different types of products. That was my first sense of that experience with Biogen. And I haven't really had anything like that since. So I'm still trying to run with it a bit, which is why I'm putting effort into making the next update. But yeah, even in terms of money, even though it was a free add-on, it's still one of my highest grossing resources online at the moment. And that's, again, because people are very keen to donate. So, yes.
Yeah. It's sometimes really strange also on the artwork level. When you create an artwork, maybe you feel inspired, create something in one day, put it out there, and it gets a lot of attention. And then on the other hand, you spend months on creating an artwork, and then you finally finished it and put it online, and then nobody cares about it.
Absolutely, yeah. I know that one. But that is something important as well that other people looking to become YouTubers should keep in mind, is that you really should keep an eye on your time investments, because just because of what we're talking about there, that's the reason why I don't want to spend too long working on every individual project. Now, of course, it's a good idea to have some substantial projects, especially such as with your courses. They took a long time to make and they're very high quality and they have a good purpose. But for me, doing my type of content, I don't want to spend like more than 3 weeks working on each individual project, because if I spend too long making something and then it gets like no response, then that's a wasted time for me. And of course, it makes me feel bad. Whereas if I spend only 1 to 2 weeks on something and then each one does mediocre, then I'll feel a lot better about that, because I'll know, okay, if this individual one doesn't do that well, then I've always got the next one coming up soon.
Yeah, what I learned is when you really plan to put time and effort into a big project where you feel that this might be like a big thing for your business, is to do a test, like a minimal viral product, where you basically you just can ask your community, hey, I have the plan to create this product, this course or whatever. Would you be interested in that? And then you can already test the waters. And if nobody is interested, then you don't spend months on creating it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What kind of artists, books, courses, YouTube channels have influenced you the most till this point?
That's a difficult one, because I mean, I've always been obsessed with YouTube. So I follow hundreds of channels and all different types of genres and stuff. So I guess all of them have influenced me in some way, especially just down to like the conventions, when you should say certain things, when you should thank your audience, how you should present. So I can't really pinpoint down individual YouTube channels per se, but artists, Paul Papera, he was an incredible hard surface artist. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago. He's also the co-founder of a company called System Era, who have been making the Astroneer game. He is probably the artist that made me just stop and go, wow, the most, because he was doing some incredible things, mixing just, first of all, incredible hard surface artwork and models with things like cloth simulations from Marvelous Designer in a way that other people just hadn't seen before. So occasionally I go back to his ArtStation profile, which is now like a memorial ArtStation profile, because they do that whenever someone passes away. They put a little note there, so you know. And I just sit down and enjoy it again. But yeah, other than that, there's a whole host of other artists. I like 2D, 3D artworks, fantasy, sci-fi. It's just a big blend. So yeah, but that's the key name that I just wanted to throw out there.
Okay. And any books or something you would like to recommend? Do you read at all?
I do read, yeah. I read a mix of fiction and non-fiction. As for fiction, I like Ian Banks for his sci-fi books. Again, he passed away not that long ago. For non-fiction, I like anything sort of scientific and history-wise and sort of philosophy in between. I like the work of Yuval Noah Harari. And and anything. I like Brian Cox as well. He's like a sort of BBC presenter. He's a science communicator, and he does a lot of like documentaries with like good visuals and well presented for the common audience. But as well as that, whenever they put a series out, they tend to do like a paperback version of the book, which basically notes down all the things that were discussed throughout the series. But I really like those because then it gets more in depth with his mentality and the presentation of that content, and they really talk about some key concepts. And there's one book in particular called Forces of Nature, co-written by Brian Cox, and that one really changed the way I look at the world, because it starts to teach you about how patterns that exist on the micro level also exist on the macro level, and that was interesting because it sort of translates into a technical sense, especially since I'm interested in like generative type procedures and like procedural content for modeling and stuff, and how like you can use the same algorithm, for example, to create a building as you can to describe an entire like universe, on different levels. So yeah, I do a fair amount of reading, and I like mixing up different authors and different genres and stuff. Again, just like, with the YouTube channels and artworks, I just try and absorb as many different fields as possible, because I feel like that always keeps me like tingling on the edge and looking for the next creative thing.
Yeah, nice. So with your YouTube channel and the things you do right now, what are your future plans? You just keep going with the stuff you do?
Well, I've always like had some end goal ideas, but I always leave the path to get there completely unknown, because it would be foolish to like try and plan out every individual day, every month, leading up, because it's still a learning experience. And you have no idea how fast you're going to grow, or what people you're going to come into contact with, or what you're going to be interested in, or the developments that come out in the community. For example, Pablo de Borro with all the sculpting tool improvements, for example, that gets me motivated to make new kinds of videos, and I would have not been able to have predicted that beforehand. But I would like to make some more game development related things. I would also like to make some music related things, and some short film related things, and maybe some documentaries, but we'll see. I've got like loads of ideas listed down in my Trello board.
Yeah.
Ideas that have been there since the channel started that I just haven't really gotten around to doing yet.
What I always tell people is like to focus on specific things to go towards your goal and reach something. So this sounds like very different stuff. Do you want to still focus on the stuff you do right now for now, or?
Yeah, that's always been the difficulty in like the decision making process, because of course I want to focus around the Blender community and tutorials and stuff, but naturally Blender is such a diverse software that it touches into so many industries that just focusing solely on Blender feels a bit narrow focus, which is why I want to demonstrate to people, how can you use this for game development? How can you use this for visual effects or other things and stuff like that? And yeah, it's always tough when I want to work on an idea, but I have to stop and think, okay, well, is my audience that I've built so far really going to be interested in specifically this field? How can we tie this together with like things that we've already talked about in the channel and stuff like that? But again, at the end of the day, the channel is me. It's the Curtis Holt channel. So it's, in my mind, should be a reflection of what I'm interested in. Talking again about what we mentioned earlier about how you should put your own mentality before the content you make. And I hope that my audience understands that, and I feel like they do, because they're very generous, they're very personal, and they're easy to communicate with. And at the end of the day, they're there because of you, as much as they're there because of your content. But yeah, so that's just always something that I'm keeping in mind, and I'm trying to work with. And I'm sure the channel a year from now will look the same, but also completely different, I'm sure. But I'll find a way to get there.
Do you tested the waters by putting out content which is like really different from the other stuff you do, and how your community reacts to that?
Yeah, I test the waters all the time. So I have the regular tutorial content, and then, as you know, I've done some discussion videos where I show off different resources available online, because I've done affiliate for your course in those. And as well as that, I do making of videos. So this is like reaching into the more technical side, the programming side. And I've realized, okay, those videos don't do that well in terms of views, but they are more meaningful for the people that are interested in that subject. And then I've experimented with doing like a couple of little shorts. And I realized, okay, they don't do that well in terms of views, but they spread throughout the community better. And so it's learning about like how the community and your audience responds to all these different types of content that I think tapping into that will help me find a path to reach those end goals that I talked about. I haven't really experimented with the game development type videos yet, and or the music side of things, but we'll see. So I'm keen to do more experimentation, especially throughout this year, to see if I can like sort of nudge the channel in a better direction to sort of tap in on my larger interests. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, having a focus somehow can mean many different things. Like from outside, your channel looks like you, and I think even if you have content with different direction, it's still you making it, and it's still like the Curtis Holt feel all the videos will have. So I think if somebody follows you and likes in general the stuff you do, then I think this can totally work.
Yeah, just to like give an example, I've been doing some work in Unity for the past week or two, where I've made this first-person controller which also switches into a zero gravity mode and can rotate. And then whenever it resets back into like a walk mode, the gravity adjusts to like where their feet were pointing. So it's quite fun because you can like jump around all these different structures and like watch all these physics objects fall around. And I had a lot of fun making that, but I haven't found a way to present that to the channel yet. And it's also something where like, I don't want to explain the step-by-step procedure of how to make it because it took like days and days and so I've been trying to find formats to make that more viable, but there is one channel I like called Sebastian Larg or Laig. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he does these cool coding adventure videos, as he calls them. And I like that because he shows like the experiment and then he does like a brief breakdown of the technique used to achieve it without going into like the extreme detail of how the project was set up on like a step-by-step process. So I'm sort of keen towards doing some of those types of videos as well in the future.
That sounds good. So if you could learn one skill right now instantaneously, what would it be? Like you snap with a finger and you have it.
Music production.
Music production.
Yeah, I am interested in it and I have been doing some of it, especially with the alternate reality project. But most of that was with like ambient soundscapes and sort of symbolic noises mixed into sort of melodies. But more actual music development, because there's this little niche of music that I really love, but there's not a lot of people exploring it, which is synth pop, but with a darker side of it. had like sort of industrial synth pop, and there's only like a few artists in there which I really admire, but it's a sort of empty genre otherwise. So I would love to explore some of that and mix it with my like artistic skills to create some interesting audio visual experiences that people can enjoy on the channel.
Sounds interesting. So do you play any instruments?
I don't know. I'm all technical computer
Okay.
and And on the side of that as well, I have plans written down for writing generative music software. So like using 3D circuitry to sort of design melodies and music and stuff like that. But it's all experimental and it's all just theoretical in design notes right now. So maybe I'll get there soon.
Yeah. But I thought you were more this kind of person to do it technically.
Yeah.
So what is the best purchase you've ever made?
That's a rough one. I would say my computer, but that's too obvious. So there's a book that really helped me get to grips with programming, and it was like Beginning C++ for Game Programming, Volume 2. And I remember like I would take that into school every day, and when I like finished my work, I would just open it up in class, and people would look at me weird because they'd be like, "Oh, why is he reading a programming book?" But that book was the one that like taught me about object-oriented programming, and I think it sort of taught me how to think as well. It was like one of these pivotal books that you read that just sort of sets your direction up for life, and that was one of them. So I think that was a good purchase.
Cool. I think you mentioned this already, but how do you keep inspired? Inspired.
Well, there's a whole range of things. I noticed that if I don't keep taking in stimulation from like, films and music and stuff, then I start getting pretty anxious and cranky really quickly. So it's almost a necessity to like take in all these forms of entertainment. Also with like video games and stuff. Basically, I'm just always looking for a new content in those fields. In the artwork side of things, there's always ArtStation and Pinterest and YouTube again. With music, Google Play Music has this nice sort of recommendation system where it looks at what you listen to and then it tries to figure out new things. Books, Amazon always recommending me like similar books to what I've read as well. So I'm always just keeping an eye on all these feeds just to try and keep myself stimulated.
So, and I think to sum it up here, have you any advice for people wanting to start a successful YouTube channel, maybe CG art related or also in general?
I would say no matter what you're doing, know what you're interested in and know what your audience is. Now, the first one is common sense, know what you're interested in, but I think it's also something that people overlook quite often, because I think a lot of the time people want to have YouTube channels as like the primary focus, but don't necessarily know what the YouTube channel is going to be about. So you need to figure that out first. Because, like I've seen so many people that they'll start a YouTube channel and their first video will be like, hey, this is my YouTube channel, just starting, going to make all sorts of stuff. I'd say don't do that. Just know what you want to make and do that, like to start with. And the second point about knowing who your audience is, you need a community to share your work with. So, for example, with us, it's the Blender community, and thankfully it's quite a large community, and there's many ways to like present your content to those people. But I'm sure that there are lots of niches that where the community isn't that obvious. So you should do a little bit of research on figuring out the best way to present your content to that community. Not even necessarily before you start. I mean, you can make some content first and then figure out a way to share it, but you just need to know that there is a community there that's going to help you grow. Because, really the best way to grow on YouTube when you're starting out is to bring in the viewership externally. You can't really rely on YouTube to recommend your content, from the beginning. So you need to be responsible for giving yourself that kick right at the start. So that's the advice I would give to someone starting out. And really, for eventually making a living with it, it sort of follows with the size of your audience, because the opportunities that you will have to monetize on it will grow with the audience itself. So if you focus on the audience, then possibilities will open. You have the choice of whether you want to set up the advertisements on the channel, Patreon, sell resources, sell physical things, or all these other avenues. So that's really all the advice I have for people.
And I think some people might be afraid of, like, they want, for example, start a Blender related YouTube channel, but there are already so many Blender YouTube channels. So is it worth starting in the first place?
Definitely is, because we all have our own different niches as Blender YouTubers, and we all help each other out, because when one of us makes a video, it quite often recommends videos from each other's channels because we're part of the same community. So by starting a Blender tutorial channel, you will not only be basically cashing in on the recommendation cycle from the rest of us, but you will also be helping the rest of us by creating opportunities for recommendations. So it's definitely worth it. But if you're worried about like not knowing where you fit into the community or not having a niche, first of all, if you're artistic, just focus on your artwork to start with, because you may even have a style without realizing it that people connect with. And really, at the end of the day, as we've said earlier on, focus on what you enjoy and what you want to make, because as you make content related to that, people will definitely recognize it and key into it. And really, I would not be worried about like stepping on the same fields as other people. Just don't be worried about it. People aren't going to be angry at you for doing similar things. This is a very friendly community. And at the end of the day, the more content there is, the better it is for everyone. And you will be welcomed in with open arms. So,
yeah. I think the Blender community is a very a friendly community, also among the creators itself. And also, like, it's not if you create a YouTube channel or if there's somebody else doing similar stuff that he's stealing the views and the subscribers. Like, as everyone, we are interested in different people and different things, and we like to watch because everyone has a different style of teaching and even teaches different things, even if it's about the same subject. So
yeah, that's actually a really interesting point, because that brings up Ian Hubert, who does the short videos, the very comedic ones that go very popular, because that became a major discussion point amongst Blender YouTubers, because some people started trying to do those types of videos as well to get more views. And in some cases it backfired, and in some cases it did well. But one thing we realized after discussing this with each other was that, the same people that are watching the fast content are also people that are watching the slow content. And at the end of the day, they just enjoy all the content. They come to different people for different reasons, depending on what they do and their personality types. So it's really a non-competitive environment, which makes it quite enjoyable to work in.
Yeah. And it's also sometimes, I feel when I follow certain YouTubers and watch them, it's not always just about the content. It's also about the creator itself, that you just enjoy, listen to him or see what he's up with next and stuff like this. So
yeah, that's definitely an important side of it. And that's why I think it's important to sort of balance your personality between your work as well. Because that's another thing that I was struggling with at the start, was I really didn't want to show my face on camera or give too much personality away, because first of all, I'm quite an anxious person and rather self-conscious, but I've learned to get over that a bit. And that's because I wanted more of a personal connection with the audience. Now, not everyone will, but I think it's a valuable thing to show people that you're a human being, because then they will be more likely to, feel attached to your content and interested in what you have to present next.
Yeah. It's also what I recommend, to show your face, at least in the beginning and at the end of the video. I don't recommend showing your face throughout the whole video on the little side, because this is distracting from the main content. But yeah, Curtis, it was a pleasure to have you here. And
thank you for having me. Really nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, and all the best for everything you do.
Yes, and best to you as well. And for anyone else out there that's interested in starting a channel or just with whatever you want to do, good luck, and I hope it goes well.
Awesome. By the way, everything we have mentioned here, some resources, links, and so on, you can find down below in the video description to check it out. Thanks, everyone, and see you next time. Goodbye.